Some movies are good, some movies are great, and some movies define a decade. I had this idea for a video the first time I watched Tangerine, and I remember thinking, wow, that's a film that had changed cinema and how we perceive it. And even though this film isn't on the list, it made me think of how, when in the 70s or 60s, you were told that in order to make a great film, you need this huge equipment and big camera crew and all that. But then Sean Beck comes around and he makes a film with his iPhone. And I'm not saying this is the first film that ever made an iPhone, and I'm not quite sure if it was the first feature film to be fully filmed on an iPhone. But I think for me it was one of those films that I watched and I was like, wow, if you want to make a good film, the only thing you need is a good story, and with that you have everything you can do with whatever you have. So yeah, it made me think I want to talk about films that has influenced us and had so much impact, not only on the time that they came out, but still to that day. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into this list. A Trip to the Moon is a classic and it did change cinema. And when you think about films from the 1900s, the first one that comes to mind is A Trip to the Moon, and George Méliès, of course. It's also an important achievement because Méliès was an auteur intrigued by the new medium. He used editing tricks and other techniques that may seem quiet today, but were revolutionary at the time, such as showing character vanish in a puff or smoke or superimposing an actor's face into the moon. His skills involved creating visuals that were groundbreaking for their time and attracted many fans and copycats. He wasn't really much of a storyteller though, so his work is best appreciated through the lens. The plot is incredibly ambitious for a time period, and the first sci-fi film pulls it off quite well. It's a motion picture with 30 scenes, and that, when you think about it now, it seems like whatever. But he was quite ambitious in the 1900s. Further, Méliès was creating an entire fantasy planet to enchant his viewers. His investment of the time and money paid off in worldwide enthusiasm for the film. Honorable mentions: The Great Train Robbery. The 1910s. I'm not very familiar of movies from the 1910s, to be honest, but typically when people talk about the movie that changed how movies are made, The Birth of Nation is the movie that is brought up. Yet for all of its technical achievement, Cabiria, made the year before and on the other side of the world, has all the technical marvel of Griffith's Civil War, but with more splendor, fun, and excitement. Although I respect and admire technical achievement he made, I found the movie quite boring and moving. And on the other hand, Cabiria, it's not only more moving and maybe exciting film, but it is also a technical better made film. More famously, Cabiria introduced camera movement independent from the movement of on-screen characters, a technique that made to be known as Cabiria movement, now known as a tracking shot. Arguably the first horror movie in cinema history, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari holds up much better than it has any right to be. This grandfather of horror cinema is way more than a historical token. It's a murder mystery set in a nightmarish landscape with an extremely bizarre set design perfectly aligned with the style of its subgenre. It's wide open with many outlets but doesn't settle for one until the very last scene, which must have been so revolutionary back then. Wing creates a canvas of slanted sets, canted pathways, 3D shadows, and grotesque yet human characters. His tale is dark and allegorical, dealing with a man who is compelled to commit crimes in his sleep and reflecting a nation scared by war. The story is darkly compelling and deals with themes of losing control and forced atrocities. Wayne and his filmmaking team have created not only a standout horror film but a standalone film for the ages. Its terrors, both narrative and visual, the film is haunting and chilling. It's the stuff of nightmares that still has power nearly a century after it was made. Metropolis is one of the first silent films I've ever seen in my life, and the one that left me in shock of how good it is to be made in the 1920s. It's not just unfathomable how visionary and so timeless it is. The technical limitation of its era only enabled it to push boundaries in all the other dimensions, and the result were pure perfection. It combined so many topics into a splendid modern fable and a time capsule that still speaks volumes almost 100 years later. With incredible sets and clever use of perspective, Metropolis achieves an extraordinary scale that few silent films manage. In many ways, Metropolis peaks early at the awe inspired by the opening scene cannot be matched by the somewhat bland story to come. Yet as a work of visual storytelling, Metropolis is near perfect. Each shot conveys its emotion and narrative with clear intention. The Starfight society is displayed and captured by making people appear as machines, synchronized and lifeless. Yet there is also an energy to many of the characters, with Bridget Helm giving one of all-time great silent movie performance. The Jazz Singer is on this list not because it's a great movie, it's not even a good one, it's kind of shit, but it's the first full-length film that use sound and original music, and that's it. Let's move on. Honorable mentions: Nosferatu, The Passion of Joan of Arc, Sherlock Jr., The Kid, and Wings. The Wizard of Oz is a technicolor tale of self-discovery and empathy, trying to find oneself while escaping persecution. There's not enough that can be said about the production and costume design. Victor Fleming brought to the screen one of the most brilliant concepts in the genre, to take the audience from a sepia-toned atmosphere to a colorful world, just like he took Dorothy Gale out of Kansas. The result is literally magical. We get the classic characteristics of a good old-fashioned fairy tale, morally thought-provoking lesson, lovable costumes, iconic images, the red shoes included, an unforgettable song as a musical and as a fantasy movie as well as a classic. This is a beloved and unrepeatable treasure. Honorable mentions: City Lights, It Happened One Night, Gone with the Wind, Frankenstein. A million shots and ideas from Citizen Kane has been used and reused. The perfect deep focused cinematography and beautiful lighting choices remain as striking now as they ever have. Citizen Kane wasn't the film that changed movies history, but it did change the history of American cinema. Citizen Kane is a marvel, full of timeless montages and profound characters. It's an American myth about a temporarily embarrassed millionaire who becomes a billionaire and is now embarrassed by his loneliness. Citizen Kane is a unique structure, allows it to introduce its lead at the beginning and then work backwards to build back his layers. It presents this memory as a curse, refusing to forget the bad moments. Honorable mentions: Casablanca, The Bicycle Thief, Rope, A Matter of Life and Death, and A Wonderful Life. Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai is a cornerstone of cinema, raising storytelling and formal technique to a very high bar. As a film, Seven Samurai is likely to be best crafted story-based film in history. The characters in Seven Samurai are iconic legends, and it seems so far modern for a film to be made 60 years ago. It's now easy for me to see just how many films Seven Samurai has influenced. Countless Western and action films, and honestly any film which has a team is assembled to carry out a task. Seven Samurai is an influential film and fully lives up to its enormous reputation. Akira Kurosawa was arguably the greatest cinematic craftsman of all. Every edit, every frame, every movement, The Seven Samurai is so smooth and technically impressive. This was the first film in which Kurosawa used multiple cameras so he could shoot from different angles and directions without stopping the actors every time he wanted a different shot. Ultimately, this is a story about people in power helping those less fortunate. The final moments of the film reinstate this by demonstrating the survival of the farmers and farming community over lionessing the individual heroes. 12 Angry Men is not so much about seeking justice as it's about avoiding injustice. It's a film which questions who truly has the right to send someone to their death. From the credits onward, 12 Angry Men stays in one room until the final scene. Yet Sidney Lumet's direction doesn't falter. The camera slowly descends over the movie, placing greater emphasis on the importance of the jurors. The camera moves around the room so openly initially, and yet by the end of the film is intimate and close-up with the characters, intercutting between them like the script. Everything is so detailed and precise. The film builds up an unseen crime from words rather than action. It makes discussion so incredibly cinematic and compelling. While it may seem simple, 12 Angry Men is still unbeaten as one of the greatest works in all cinema. The Seventh Seal, which is considered by many to be Ingmar Bergman's greatest film, is the desperate vehicle for a sensitive, introspective, and insightful young man who is confused by the world around him. The imagery is blending the wonderful, penetrating black and white cinematography as to the relentlessly concentrated intentional internal struggle of the characters, and you can see the stress etched on the face of Antonius Block. The Seventh Seal is often associated with a cinematographic movement known as art house or art cinema. This movement seeks to favor artistic expression, visual narrative, and philosophical themes, and instead of commercial appeal. Ingmar Bergman presents a deliberate rhythm, symbolic images, and focus on existential and philosophical investigation, which are typical characteristic of art cinema. The visual style of the film, the use of symbolism, and the exploration of deep existential issues are key parts of the tradition of this movement, a super important movement for cinema and of course for the director's own career. maybe the most monumental film in history. I believe that Kubrick could be alive now and release this and would still feel like the filmmaker of the future. The fact that this was filmed in the 60s blows my mind. How did they even do that? And to that day where we have way better technology and they can still manage to screw visuals. That was visually stunning. Also, the camera work is flawless in every single way. Without this film, I feel many techniques that define cinema now wouldn't exist. The film prioritized symbolism and thematic development over traditional storytelling. The model work on the various spacecraft is meticulously detailed and has a fantastic aesthetic. Both interior and exterior scenes feel real and have a distinct timeless feel to them. Editing is precisely carried out, set pieces are beautiful to look at, and the visual and sound effects are so groundbreaking and ahead of its time that many films brimming with CGI today are still no match to it. 2001: A Space Odyssey is a landmark moment in motion picture history that nearly killed its genre for its set and standards so high that it hasn't been equaled or challenged since. Psycho is one of those films that still leaves such an impact on the audience when they watch it today. Immortal for its contribution to cinema, notorious for pushing the boundaries of what expected in mainstream films, and setting a high benchmark for horror films to follow. Perkins as Bates is a show stealing, considering that he starts out pretty calmly but steadily levels up to the story progresses, and it's absolutely chilling in the film's final moment. Editing is also worthy of mentioning because for its pace and streamlines the plot ingeniously and certainly stands out in what happens to be the film's most famous sequence. And yet the biggest contribution of all comes from Bernard Herrmann's spectacularly terrifying score that makes its presence feel felt from the beginning and ends up in intensifying the overall viewing experience by a considerable extent. On the overall scale, with its intense atmosphere that looms over the plot from start to finish, outstanding direction, tight screenplay, excellent performance, stunning grayscale photography, smart editing, and relentless score, Psycho is a breathtaking work of perfection that marks the creative height of Alfred Hitchcock's glorious film career. And not only is it the most influential example of its genre, but it's pretty much the reason why modern horror exists in the first place. Lawrence of Arabia is a massive, sprawling epic of a movie. You've heard of it before and you know that it's big, but it's impossible to overstate just how gigantic it really is. But sheer size is far from the only thing that makes it so impressive and such an enduring text in our cinematic history. The production design is not only big, it's also gorgeous. The desert, in fact, becomes almost another character in the story. It structurally occupies the place of the antagonist in the film narrative. Lawrence is an enigmatic venture abroad, convinced that he can remake the world, and he wants to do so for noble reasons, but he accomplishes nothing, gets scored of those who trusted him killed, commits some more crimes, and return home consumed with self-loathing and at the very same longing for purpose and meaning that pulled him away in the first place. One of those that still holds an undeniably unique place in cinema. Honorable mentions: 8½, The Umbrella of Cherbourg, Persona, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, Breathless, and Playtime. Star Wars is the ultimate adventure. It's a serialist, western, sci-fi, and space operas are all combined into one utter masterwork of world building. There is a reason this is one of the most iconic movies of all time. Winners of 6 Oscars, countless other, and praised from the majority of the world. Star Wars is and will always be iconic, and it was the first trilogy to take the world by storm. The original Star Wars score has to be one of the greatest scores of all time. It's remarkable, unforgettable, and adds so much tension and passion to the final product that it elevates nearly every aspect of the film and instantly become one of the most iconic scores in history. No other film prior to the release of Taxi Driver could match its sheer intensity. The screenplay by Schrader captures the raw essence of the 70s. It's a story with a powerful message that doesn't preach to the choir. Playing the lead character, Travis Bickle, De Niro's performance is brilliant in the way he conveys loneliness, social awareness, and isolation. You can't help but have sympathy for him. His transformation becomes scary though. He's slowly losing his mind right before our eyes, from being mentally unstable to becoming a cold-blooded killer. Scorsese established himself as a filmmaker with a truly original visual style. His movies are beautiful to look at, edgy, and have an in-your-face style of filmmaking. Taxi Driver, with become Scorsese's greatest achievement because it would go on and to set the tone for the hype of visual achievement and gritty material that Scorsese would create for the next 40 years. Simply put, The Godfather is perfect. No film except its sequel has come close to the level of cinematic nirvana that Coppola's work achieves. The performance, the direction, the writing, Gordon Willis' cinematography, the story, the set pieces, the tension, the dynamic, the layers, it all works very well. Some of the greatest work of literature. Francis Ford Coppola is a genius. He created an icon of modern narrative and carried the movement of the new Hollywood as no one could have done. Through a complex tapestry of power, loyalty, and morality, the film takes us on a deep dive into the life of Corleone's family, revealing not only the eternal function of a criminal organization, but also the dynamics that rule these conditions they live in. The narrative structure of The Godfather is a masterpiece in itself. The film unfolds at such a methodical pace, where each scene is meticulously constructed, revealing layers and more layers of emotional and moral complexities. Coppola uses a continuous action narrative intertwining crucial moments every minute when the story moves forward, and this offers a very intimate view for those who are watching. The Godfather is both a milestone for the history of cinema and for its importance of the culture impact. It's a work that refined the genre of crime and influenced generations of filmmakers and writers. Honorable mentions: Apocalypse Now, Stalker, The Exorcist, Jaws, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The energy of this movie is off the charts. The score, the pacing, the writing, the characters, every single aspect of this movie never fails to leave me utterly mesmerized how perfectly fine-tuned everything is. It's certainly one of the most feel-good films I have ever seen. It's an astonishing really how well this film works on all levels imaginable. In a film these days, I often miss the art of telling a simple entertaining story and lifting up to the higher level by the way it's told. This film doesn't bombard you with special effects or high octane bass. It takes its time to do what it has to do and does it with passion and firm belief that it will succeed. The warmth, the comfort is possibly the most structural sound piece of popcorn movie making that it's been given to us as a movie watchers. Aside from the story, Back to the Future is an ideal combination of film elements. What results from all of this is a film that is funny, riveting, and packed with upbeat energy. Kubrick horror mindfuck masterpiece based on the book by none other than Stephen King, not merely King's scariest novel, but it's also his most tragic. A banned metaphor for relapse and movingly foreground that the reason that they're called recovering addicts is that the demons never fully go away. Jack Nicholson gives a performance that goes from fully crazy to an existential specter of rage and terror over the course of 2 hours. Undoubtedly a masterpiece. Like all the Kubrick movies, it hints at the deep satanic evil and the hurt of America. Production design team deserves all the praise. They meticulously designed set pieces since it provides the hotel of an identity of its own. On an overall scale, The Shining is a thought-provoking meditation on madness, isolation, and paranoia that defines everything that was usually a norm in the genre of horror back then, yet puts on a screen a cinema that is now regarded as a definitive example of atmospheric horror, immortal for its contribution to horror as staple to pop culture. The Shining remains one of the greatest achievements of its genre. It's only getting better with every passing year and definitely ranks among Stanley Kubrick's finest work. Few movies out there that know how to toy with emotion through music the way this one does. Lots of ideas being tossed around in every conversation that all makes a lot more sense and hit just that much harder when you know the entire film plays out, in which Spike Lee turns the casual everyday classic brace realistic tension of hot summer hangout day on a sweaty block in Brooklyn and slowly escalates them into a tragic political pressure cooker masterpiece of humanity and history that will hopefully one day feel dated. It's also such a sharp script added to be by so many fantastic performances that are so good at accumulating seemingly minor moments of personality that will just explode into an incredible gag or an unexpected confrontation at any moment. On top, conveying such important ideas and feelings that I sometimes forget how astonishing a piece of visual sonic direction it is too. The way camera elegantly glides, crane bands and zooms around these apartments and streets are the entire world. The musical sense of montage connecting all these people via issues. It's a movie about community, about the individual that makes up a community, about that challenge and fears and resentments and anxieties and joys and happiness that will fill their lives, and about the way racism phrased the bonds of community with suspicions and hatred. The bright colors and hyper stylization cannot hide the fact Do the Right Thing is a profoundly sad film, and I still can't believe it was nominated for a Best Picture. Honorable mentions: Once Upon a Time in America, Bran, Indiana Jones, Paris, Texas, Come and See, Cinema Paradiso, Blade Runner. Sorry, I was instructed not to talk about it. I seriously question the sanity of anyone who doesn't think this is an excellent movie. For all its hopeful and hopeless moments and the dialogue that makes us think about life and how we perceive it and other people as well. This is an incredibly touching and emotional piece of cinema. One of the most impressive King adaptations, and I would say it contains the best performance ever cast member has given to this day. On an overall scale, The Shawshank Redemption stresses that based on the outlook of life, there are only two types of people. One who can be free even in prison, while others who find themselves imprisoned even in the freedom. The message it's trying to resonate is clear. Fear can hold you prisoner, hope can set you free, and if we all give ourselves some hope, there is nothing we can't survive. Yes, it seems preachy and everything, but then if there has ever been a movie that has earned this sort of right, it's The Shawshank Redemption. Pulp Fiction is a masterpiece of utter pointlessness. It's a constructed outside any convention or system, and so deeply committed to itself that it forms something genuinely unique. Pulp Fiction is a truly special just for existence. Nothing else has achieved its perfect blend. There are many criticisms I have about Pulp Fiction, but they don't matter. It's a film with zero substance, but it's a shallow film that's most pure at being so and most intelligent in execution. It was a water-washed moment in postmodern cinema, rejecting any notion of morality, a defining feature of a classical and modern storytelling. Further than that, it rejects the notion of telling a single story or having a hero. It breaks down narrative order, and it has no meaning. It need not even follow the convention of having a plot. The stylistic and narrative choices raise questions, but not a single answer. Instead, Pulp Fiction drops us into a world and just expects us to go along with it. One may see the film as a cryptic enigma, but it's impossible to solve as there is no solution. Honorable mentions: Goodfellas, Lion, The Matrix, Forrest Gump, and Fallen Angels. No Country for Old Men is a modern Western that captures a country in transition, thus commenting on a present-day society and providing almost nostalgic analysis of the nature of good and evil and the inescapable stranglehold of fate. That is the beauty of this film, that even on a superficial level, it's better than most films. It's entertaining, never loses its grip, and extremely violent and drenched in a brilliant and often subtle irony, something that the Coens do like no other. It's shot beautifully, the attention to details is admirable, the crispiness and gorgeously lit images are simply stunning. It seems that everyone involved in translating the screenplay to film brought their best and managed to create this visual treat. Even when nothing is going on, you cannot help but admire and marvel the visuals on display. What makes this movie special is it can be watched on a more surface level as a new monster with some twists and turns thrown in, and it also can be watched as an older man coming to terms with the chaos of a new violent world, or it can be watched as a movie of violent karma where the universe rains down immediate punishment for all your action. Mulholland Drive always struck me as a rather unique entry in the canon of confusing cinema, not because I always understood it. Like, I've seen it twice now, and the first time I came out of it I was like, I don't think I understand it 100%, but thank God the second time I've just seen it and I can't say I understood it fully, but rather because most so-called confusing movies are always either narratively difficult like Primer or dense and surrealist like The Holy Mountain or Stalker. In other words, they are movies that are confusing because it's fundamentally unclear that even happens in them. Mulholland Drive, on the other hand, is the confusion part isn't what happens, but you know why it happens. The Alien trilogy is a particularly noteworthy for its manipulations of perception and reality, as well as literal and metaphorical boundaries. There is no defined answer, only clues scattered throughout. but this is what makes them so immersive and enjoyable. The Dark Knight is a masterpiece. Not only is it a masterpiece, it's a cultural landmark we are foolish to downplay. It's the Star Wars or Godfather of the internet era, a smash hit film that gained undeniable classic status very quickly. The Dark Knight transcends the traditional limitation of superhero adaptations. It's a visionary film. There is always more humor than you remember, but radically dark for a story of heroism. Christopher Nolan's command of technique is impeccable, as every moment coils in every rising tension. Structurally, The Dark Knight is as bold. Every watch reveals dialogue and subtitles you didn't spot before. It is just so perfectly constructed and well thought out, with layers of complexity few films have. The Joker is not a character but a catalyst, a constant for all other events to swirl around. He is truly psychotic, just as agent of chaos and nothing else. Heath Ledger's performance is going beyond acting to be a work of art by itself. Honorable mentions: Old Boy, Spirited Away, Kill Bill, Lord of the Rings, American Psycho, Gladiator, City of God, There Will Be Blood, and Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Parasite was an instant classic for me, and I think for most people. It's the rare mix of accessible mainstream storytelling that anyone can enjoy, and accompanied by plenty of subtle and layered filmmaking for fans to dissect in years to come. It's so absurd that Song Kang-ho did not get any Oscar attention for his role in this film. He gives the most expressive, wide-ranging performance of the year. Parasite is about vicious cycle. The characters don't succeed the way we might like it to be. This is not a successful guide to eating the rich or ruling the world in their place. This is not the moral of the story. For the Barks, everything that occurs will always occur in their favor. It's not that they are automatically gain, however, whenever the poor lose. It's just that wherever something truly negative happens, their wills turn lemons into lemonade and transform it into a minor inconvenience. Everything here feels elegant and masterful without ever being showy. There are some long one-liners here, but they never call attention to themselves. There are some great visual motifs here, but they rarely spoon-feed their meaning. There is some great acting here, but it never feels like acting wow meant for a show reel at the Oscars. The musical choices are often ironic and unique. The imagery is strong and crystal clear in its attentions, but the characters always feel real and never on the nose. The production design and overall choreography of the key set piece is constructed beautifully to allow for the maximum amount of Hitchcockian thrillers. Bong Joon-ho has created his masterpiece. Interstellar is one of those films that you need to watch a couple of times to totally get it, and it gets better every time, really. You start to notice the amount of small but great details that Nolan gave us from the beginning. It's just brilliant. I don't even know how can someone get an idea like that. It's genuinely an amazing script, cinematography, the score obviously. Just everything is perfect and tie everything perfectly. Still just a miracle of a movie in which Nolan found a way to merge his blockbuster-scale science fiction imagery with personal ideas about being a father on a dying planet, and how his professional/technical passions are close encounters. If we stuck with the wonder of his dad after he left his kid behind. And you can of course tell that it was highly influenced by 2001. I couldn't have made that list and not put not even just one Avengers film on it. That time was the prime of Marvel. It's an indescribable and chaotic phenomenon that you couldn't help but feel invested in. No matter how much background knowledge you have, it forces you to care at such an extreme level. These films not only go down in history as some of the most successful films financially, but as some of the most original and unique ways of telling a story through film that can only truly be accomplished with quite literally over a decade of material and precise consistency. You know, it felt like a special moment in film history at that very tippy top of the cinematic universe era that can't possibly last for as long as people expect. In the scope of things, film is still in its infancy as an art form, and to see a spectacle like this, it has so many moving parts, it's kind of remarkable. It was like living through one of the most exciting times in history to mass consume and bond over art, and that really is something. And it's one of those things that you had to be there to understand the mass love behind it. And especially Avengers Endgame, it was, abundantly gratifying final that reward long-lasting loyalty to the serialized saga. It goes to places that you don't expect and gives proper goodbyes to characters who have been with audience for years. If you are a fan of this franchise in any capacity, Avengers Endgame is you know what, undoubtedly will put a smile on your face. Honorable mentions: La La Land, Get Out, The Grand Budapest Hotel, Arrival, The Social Network, Mad Max Fury Road, Uncut Gems, The Witch, Birdman, and Inception. Obviously, we're still in the 2020s, and I don't want to say a couple of movies that will define the decade because it's not fair, honestly. We still have a couple of years in it. But when I think of 2020 so far, I think of one of the biggest, most monumental, and perfect project that we has got so far. It's Dune. So honestly, I choose Dune as, a classic. I do believe it's gonna be a classic, and I can't wait for Dune Messiah. I think it's gonna tie everything perfectly. I think short of a monumental achievement in science fiction filmmaking, it's a sincerely overload and one of the most immersive cinematic experience ever crafted. When you watch it, you can tell that Denis Villeneuve is operating on another level, a level of ambition and audacity we rarely see within the art form. Dune Part 2 and 1 really elevates itself to transcendent heights. Among the Phantom of Greats, it has cemented its name alongside the immortal in film history as one of the greatest sequels ever. This has never failed to deliver awe-inspiring visual sequences one after another, as well as the amounting sense of devastation and fear concerning the past of several characters. I genuinely believe that this is an instant classic, and I don't say that without seriousness. Definitely one of a kind event to remember, and a complete generation spanning sci-fi epic about fate and sacrifice. So yeah, here's my list from films that I believe that have changed cinema and over the decades. You may not agree with me, I don't really care, make up your own list, but yeah, those are all great films. Go watch and make your own opinions, and that's it.